Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here for our presentation and panel. I have here Steph Stern from the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute and Laurie from the Energy Project. My name is Nancy Lee, and I'm from Kaiser Permanente. Now, our presentation is called Mindfulness and the Tech Workspace. Now, everybody knows what a tech workspace is, right? It's basically the same thing as a tech workplace, where you work. But what about mindfulness? How many people here are familiar with mindfulness? Yeah, quite a few, nice. Mindfulness is all about being present, being able to understand how you're feeling at the given moment. And then being aware of things around you, especially people and how they're feeling at any given moment. Based on that, you could make the right decisions, the right moves by reading the situation correctly. And then you could be more successful, more productive, happier, and more relaxed. Now, along with this, there are mindfulness techniques, tools and techniques. In fact, let's try one right now. I'd like everybody to stand up, and I'll lead you through an exercise. The exercise is called 3 breaths, and I'll lead it. What you'll do basically is inhale deeply through your nose, and then exhale through your mouth. I'll lead it. Okay, everybody, inhale and exhale. Inhale, exhale. Last time. Inhale, exhale. Okay, please sit down. Now, does anyone feel a little bit different after that? You might feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more able to concentrate. And this is a great technique to use in between your meetings or before you have a hard, difficult conversation. Or maybe before you enter your house at night to be with your family and to be able to connect with them better. It's great. Now, once again, my name is Nancy Lee, and I work at Kaiser Permanente. I'm an IT program manager in our CTO organization. I specialize in cloud strategy and implementations. And guess what? I'm also creating a mindfulness program for our CTO organization, which I am so excited about. Now, I've been working in IT for roughly 28 years. And I can remember the first day I started my first real job. This was after I graduated. I got a job at Chevron as a software developer. I was being introduced to all the people in my team. And I gotta tell you, everybody looked so bright. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I thought, I want to be just like them. And I've got to prove myself. I've got to really ramp up and be good just like them. So what did I do? I decided to work very hard. Were any of you in the same situation? You just wanted to prove yourself? I mean, some days I feel like I'm still trying to prove myself. Well, I did that. I worked long hours, late nights, weekends, you name it. And I said yes to everything. Anytime anyone asked me to do something, I said yes. And I pushed myself. I did that for 5 years. I got great reviews. I was very happy. Everyone liked me. But I felt like I wanted to be better. So I kept pushing myself more and more. In fact, every Monday I would go in and talk to my team and say, wow, I worked 60 hours last week. And they said, that's great. I worked 70 hours. So everybody was doing it. But you know what? After 10 years, it became not as fun. In fact, it was stressful. I was working so many hours, I didn't have time to take care of myself. I wasn't very happy. I wasn't getting along with people because I was irritable. And then my health started to fail. I also got very insecure about my job. I wasn't getting the good ratings in my performance anymore. And I became very territorial with my work. I didn't want anybody to do anything like what I was doing. And when I went into code reviews, design reviews, I nitpicked everybody to try to make them look bad so that I could look good. But you know what? I didn't feel good about that. I was dinging myself even by doing that. So I was very unhappy. My health was poor. And then I was talking to a friend of mine. She said, why are you doing that? Look at you, you're working all of those hours and your health is failing. You need to take a look at yourself and make a change. And she gave me a mindfulness book. I started reading it. I learned about all the tools and techniques that are associated with mindfulness. Things like visualizing positive outcomes to make them happen. Also, paying attention to the way I feel, respecting myself, by doing things I want to do versus things that I think other people want to do or want me to do. And I also learned to accept imperfection. I'm still working on that one. Now after that, after being in that stressful situation and using those mindfulness techniques, things slowly got to be better. And I gotta tell you, I started to feel more open. I was actually working less hours and getting more done. Can you imagine that? Working less hours and getting more done? I was more efficient. And things got better. I started paying attention to what I wanted to do. I started taking time out and nurturing myself. And then I started getting along better with people. My health got better. My relationships got better, especially with my family. It was incredible. And once again, I was happy. Now, I want to pose a question to all of you. What if the workplace could be a place where we learn about these things, where we learn about mindfulness, how to love ourselves, how to respect ourselves, and then in turn, become more efficient, be happier, make the company more successful? What if that were possible? Well, it is. There are actually mindfulness programs that can be implemented in companies. And I'd like now to turn this over to Steph Stern, where she'll tell you about mindfulness programs that can be implemented and their benefits. Steph Stern.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. I'm going to build on what Nancy shared, particularly her personal story, and really talk about mindfulness as an organizational practice. So first, kind of why would you do it? Why bring mindfulness into an organization? I feel like this picture really sums it up nicely. Does anyone feel like this sometimes at work? I even work for a mindful organization, and I often feel like this. There are just so many different things demanding our attention these days, different modes of communication, email, text, chat, different projects, different people, family, work, home, the news, what's happening in the world. There's a lot to pay attention to. And we don't often build tools to figure out how to manage all of those inputs well. And I think that's really one of the promises of mindfulness, is really that shift from reactive on autopilot to being aware and making deliberate choices. So as many of you might know, there are a lot of organizations now that are bringing mindfulness into the workplace. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, SAP, just to name a few. And I think this is really at the crux of why we're seeing this trend in mindfulness. It's really helping people deal with often an overwhelming work situation. I know for myself, I sort of came to mindfulness partly for this literal reason of feeling like I was too scattered, as well as a more deeper feeling of, was I making the choices in my life that I wanted to make? And mindfulness doesn't give you the answers. It gives you a helpful tool, a way of being more aware of the decisions we're making and the things that we're reacting to. I love this quote from Todd Pierce, Vice President at Salesforce. Mindfulness is a super skill that brings out the best in people. I think that's such a nice way to summarize the promise of what bringing mindfulness into the workplace can do, just like Nancy talked about. And I really want to be clear when I talk about mindfulness, I mean it in a pretty holistic way. So at Search Inside Yourself, we're really talking about mindfulness-based emotional intelligence. So the Search Inside Yourself program is one that initially was developed at Google. It was an early Google engineer that had his own mindfulness practice and thought, I think it would be really helpful if my colleagues had one too. Many of you I know already practice mindfulness, so you might also be thinking a similar thing. And he ended up bringing together experts in mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and neuroscience to build the Search Inside Yourself program that we now offer outside of Google. And I really want to highlight that because I think these two pieces work really well together. So mindfulness, that ability to be present, as Nancy was describing, to be aware of what's happening in the moment, that's the foundation of self-awareness. That's the foundation of all of the other emotional intelligence skills. It's a practice that's very trainable that helps you better understand yourself and better work with others. So the two together makes it very practical and very applicable, very trainable. And that has implications on the individual, team, and organizational level. So just from Nancy's story, you can hear a lot of the benefits from an individual perspective. Ability to manage stress, to increase happiness and well-being, increase engagement and productivity at work. So lots of benefits just on an individual level of practicing mindfulness. That also can spill over into team effects, and particularly if you're bringing a program in designed for a team and a workplace. You learn how to listen better to other people, to empathize with other people's perspective, to work more collaboratively, not always agreeing, sometimes even having a mindful disagreement where you can honor and respect each other's opinions, but also figure out ways to move forward. And that all builds up to some real organizational change, or it can. These are all real leadership skills. So when the leadership of an organization engages in mindfulness and emotional intelligence, it can really shift a culture. And even if individuals are practicing, it can add up to a culture that is more compassionate, more collaborative, more self-aware as an organization, which often brings more meaning and more engagement into work. So lots of really neat impacts on lots of levels. I want to share an example with you, and I picked a healthcare example here. This is Chalk Children's, the Children's Hospital of Orange County, Chalk Children's in Southern California. And a few years ago, when they did an employee engagement survey, they found out that employees had really low engagement. It was about 36%, all-time low for them. People felt like the organization was not helping them manage their stress. They were feeling burnt out. I'm sure many of you can kind of understand, particularly in the healthcare space, changing landscape of regulations, lots of uncertainty about the future. They had also gone through layoffs. So it wasn't surprising that engagement was quite so low. They did a number of different things to address it, including working with us to bring in the Search Inside Yourself mindfulness program, first to their leadership as part of a leadership summit, and then they rolled it out to nurses and clinical staff. And I actually have a quote here, because I really like the way that Robbie described it. We were working with a manager in their HR department. She was responsible for bringing it into the leadership team in particular. And she said, "There were people that contacted me afterwards and said, I left work that day and I didn't check my email. I spent the whole weekend with my family. I haven't done that in 2 years." The experience helped them recognize that we're offering not just a skill, but a way to be present for the things that are really most important. So at Chalk Children's, they have a vision that anyone can have a mindful moment. And I love that vision. And I want to share this example with you because they're also doing a whole ecosystem of different things around mindfulness. So some direct training, they worked with us to bring the Search Inside Yourself program in. They also have a meditation app that they provide as an employee benefit. They use the Will app. They also have in-person meditation sessions that either somebody leads or they just listen to one of the guided meditations in the app together. So those are all things that are developing really specific skills on an individual level, helping people build up their own practice. They've also found some great ways to integrate mindfulness into the daily work that they do. So for example, the executive team committed to starting their leadership team meetings with a minute of meditation. They just call it a minute to arrive. I don't think they call it meditation, but that's what they're doing. So they just set a timer and sit and breathe together before they start their meeting. And it helps them really focus and really be present for the rest of the meeting. They've also gotten, Chalk has gotten particularly creative with their mindfulness. So one really neat example that they've done, they got everybody together and did these calming jars. So it's a jar that has a mix of water, glue, and glitter. When you shake it up, it's kind of like a snow globe. The glitter gets all stirred up, and then you can just sit and watch it settle. So it's a really nice mindfulness practice. You don't need any training. And just at any time, people reach for these jars and they wrote, neat little sayings on the side of them. Just reach for the jar and use it as a way to refocus, calm down, and give yourself a little mental break. So that's just the beginning of things at Chalk. 2 years later, their employee engagement is much higher, partly thanks to these programs, as well as other wonderful things that they're doing at that hospital. So in case you're sitting here kind of curious of how would I bring this in, a lot of show of hands of people who, I think you guys have your own individual mindfulness practice. If you're thinking, how could I bring this into my workplace? I'll just give you a couple ideas of how you might get started. So for one, I would say, definitely try it and model it yourself. So if you don't already have a personal practice, try it out. And try out, if you are someone who does maybe have your own meditation practice at home, try bringing it into work. And that could be something really simple on a personal level, like using Nancy's 3 breaths practice as you transition from one place to the next, as you sit down at your desk in the beginning of a day, or if you go from meeting to meeting. You might also try bringing it and sharing it with your coworkers. Maybe it is like a minute to arrive at the beginning of a meeting that you're a part of. So sort of just play with how it might look like for you to bring some more mindfulness into your work. There also are a lot of different things you can do to just demonstrate interest and see if your colleagues might be interested too. So that could be bringing in a formal program like ours or the Energy Project that you'll hear about in a minute. It could be a speaker on the topic of mindfulness. You could also organize a mindful lunch or a mindfulness book group. We actually have a guide for the Search Inside Yourself book, but you could pick any book out there and just get people sort of engaged in it. Start building up an email list of people that are interested. and maybe even host regular meditation sessions and get a group going that sits together. Our organization sits together every Tuesday mornings, right before, it's totally optional, but we do it right before our all staff. It's a really nice way of just arriving and getting into work and being all together. And then you'll definitely want to connect the reason behind this with a key business issue. So for Chalk Children's, it was employee engagement. That was really low, it had a lot of attention, it's clear it was a big problem. For others, it might be stress and burnout, or it might even be a positive aspiration of we want to be the best place to work. So all of these are great reasons to connect mindfulness to what's happening in your organization. And you'll want to share some data around it and collect data as you go. So here's just a little bit of data from the Search Inside Yourself programs. So for every program we run, we do a pre and post assessment, and we've found statistically significant results, improvements in people's ability to manage stress, to increase resilience, to increase focus, increase your ability to collaborate and work with others, and to manage challenging situations. And these are two just really specific data points out of a larger data set. If anyone's interested, happy to share it. So great reduction in ability, or in people's feeling of being emotionally drained at work, and a great increase in their ability to bounce back emotionally after an emotionally charged situation. So some really nice statistics, particularly as you're talking to decision makers. It's always nice to see some data. So I'll just leave you with kind of another version of what Nancy asked. What would a mindful moment at work do for you? What would that be like? And think about that maybe on an individual level of how you might benefit from a little more mindfulness throughout your day, and what it might do to have that as part of your organizational culture. And I'll leave that there. It's a great transition over to Laurie Coe. She's going to be talking about how to manage your energy at work.
Good afternoon. Post-lunch, you're sitting. You can tell we're starting to lose you a little bit. So why don't we all stand up for a second. Nancy gave an example of a form of renewing ourselves and being mindful through breathing. We're going to talk about the concept of renewal in our work here. But let's do something a little bit more active now, too, just to notice how that impacts our energy. So how about, let's all stretch. Just up over your head. Yeah. Wiggle your fingers. Reach behind your back a little bit and stretch your arms back up. We are always leaning forward, especially in the work you do, over technology, over computers, right? How about, let's try to touch our toes. They're down there, even if you bend your knees. Go find them, go find your toes. Find them, there you go. Pat your knees. And then just wiggle a little bit. There you go. Okay, deep breath. Great, okay, have a seat again. So what do you notice about your energy right now?
It's improved.
Yeah, why do you think? What happened? What did we just do?
Created momentum.
Created momentum.
Increased blood flow.
Sorry?
Increased blood flow.
We increased blood flow. Yep, got some oxygen going, all that. So we're now going to talk about mindfulness from the lens of energy. And you've just heard two wonderful presentations about the different benefits of mindfulness and what it can do for us in the workplace. Well, we at the Energy Project look at the energy we bring as human beings and the understanding that actually if we can understand what our human energy is and the different ways that we fuel it, we actually can sustain higher performance through all areas of our life, work, personal, all areas. And really the idea is that we want to talk about a different way of working. Our president and CEO and founder, Tony Schwartz, is the author of many books, New York Times best-selling books, on this topic of energy. And his most recent book is The Way We're Working Isn't Working. Because we're building our work world and our work lives on principles that existed in previous generations, and it's a different world today than what they had. Now, what's one of the things that's significantly different in our world today that's changing the way that we work? Right, you're in it. You are right in the thick of it, in the technology. And it's changing us, right? It's changing our brains, it's changing our reaction time, we're on 24/7 now. What else is coming at us at a speed that is almost impossible to deal with? Coming at us. What are we getting day after day after day? Bombarded with? Information, exactly, and it's overwhelming us. And both Nancy and Steph talked about the impact of those kind of increasing demands and the information coming our way and the technology that's pulling our attention. And you are in the middle of it in your roles. So we work with a lot of companies that are looking at this and challenging, is there a different way that we can work, a different relationship that we can have with the demands in our lives? So I want to talk about this from the relationship of demand and capacity, right? How many of you feel like demands in your life have been going up in the last few years? Right? How many of you think they will continue to increase over the next couple of years? Most of you, all right? But here's the question. How many of you are sure that you will have the capacity or the fuel in your tank to be able to handle those demands coming at you in the future? Couple hands. Not quite so many, but there's a few. Sometimes I see a little bit like, yeah, I think so, maybe, hopefully. Yeah, one in the back, yes. We don't know all the time, but we just trust that somehow we're going to be able to handle the demands, and yet we don't even know the kinds of demands yet to come our way. So this relationship between demand and capacity is exhibited here in this metaphorical graph. I stress it's a metaphor. Because it turns out that physiologically, there is a point in time in our lives where we have the most capacity, actually have more capacity than the demands coming our way. But then after this age, as demands go up, our capacity actually decreases. Would you like to guess what age that is? Some people say 6. It's all over after kindergarten. No hope. Throw it out. What do you think? What age?
40, 50.
40, 50.
30.
30, age 30. That's when we have maximum physiological capacity. I'm going to stress that. After that, every year going forward, we lose 1/2 pound of lean muscle mass per year and 1% of our cardiovascular capability per year in the absence of doing anything to renew or recover that energy. So, what's the key thing that I just said at the end?
The absence of doing anything.
Right. If we do nothing, if we keep pushing ourselves, if we keep giving up sleep, if we keep giving up the things that we love, if we keep taking 24/7 connection to our technology, and we don't have that time alone to be with our families, and that story that you mentioned, 2 years if someone had been with their family really present without email. If that's how we keep living our lives, the future is not good for us physically. That's the bad news. But the good news is we can do something about it. We can do so much about it. And we know so much more now from neuroscience, from physiology and psychology, from all the different ways that we understand the human body than we ever have before, that there is much we can do to manage this differently. We have to be mindful of it, pun intended. We have to be intentional about it. So we typically take our capacity for granted, right? We get up in the morning, and even if we're tired, we think, well, I'm going to make it through the day. I'm going to plow through those meetings I have. I'm going to eat lunch on the run or whatever it might end up being. And then we come to the end of the day, and whatever's left over is what we go home with, and then we crash and start over again. But then something happens. Our body tells us we've gone too far, and how does it let us know? What happens? Tired. We get sick. That's a sign we pushed ourselves too far. So we don't want you to get sick. We don't want you to have breakdowns in relationships. We want to be able to get in front of this dynamic in a way that we can do something differently. So let me be clear. This is not about reducing the stress, because stress is going to be there our whole lives. Demands are going to keep increasing. You raised your hand and said you expect that to be so. So it's not about, well, when they get less, when we reduce that, things will be better. That's not the question anymore. The question is, how do I manage myself in the face of those demands? Because they will keep increasing. The only thing I can do anything about is my relationship with them. So we have some good news here. That while time is finite, because we all have the same amount of days and weeks and hours in the day, it's not a philosophical conversation of time, but a finite time, so many hours every day we have, and when they're gone, they're gone. Energy is different though. And in physics, it's defined as the capacity to do work. So the more energy you have, the more capacity you have. So think of those as synonymous, like the fuel in your tank, if you will. And unlike time, when it's gone, energy can be expanded and renewed and used more efficiently if we understand the principles behind it. So, one of the big ideas is that it's not just the number of hours that we invest that determines the value we create, but it's also the energy we bring to whatever hours we work, or we play, or we spend time with our loved ones. That's the paradigm shift. Right now, we're stuck in a paradigm of time. If I had more time, I would fill in the blank. But we're running out of time. We have to think of something different, and energy gives us a different door in, a different way to see our relationship with these demands. So, it turns out we have 4 sources of energy as human beings. The work that our founder has done over the years, along with the basic principles of all contemplative traditions, along with the science, is telling us the same thing. We don't just have one source of energy, we have 4. And the first one is physical energy. This is the foundation of all energy. It's our bodies. It's this vessel that we carry around with us that takes us through our days. We fuel our body 4 ways consciously. Shout them out to me. How do you fuel your body?
Eating.
Eating, nutrition.
Sleeping.
Sleeping, big one. What else? Exercise and movement. And there's a 4th one.
Drinking.
4th one people miss often.
Exercising.
Exercise and movement. Yep, that's all one. Yep. It's sorry. Say.
Breathing.
Breathing is automatic. I'm looking for the ones that we do consciously.
Connecting with people.
That's a form of another form of energy. It's actually daytime rest and renewal. You're all looking at me like, huh? What would that even be? But rest during the day, stepping away, pulsing between energy expenditure and energy renewal, that's what helps us perform at our best. It's not pushing, running from meeting to meeting, never stopping, it's like breathing. You can't be really good at inhaling, but not so good at exhaling. You have to do both. That's the pulse of our breath. Most systems in our bodies exist in pulses. Well, so must our energy throughout the course of the day. So the simple act of renewing, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute of breathing, can have a huge impact on refueling our energy. So that's our physical energy, foundation of all else. Oh, by the way, which of those 4 is the most important? Sleep, movement, renewal, or nourishment? Which is the most important?
Sleep.
Sleep. Most people think that it's nutrition, but we can live longer without food than we can without sleep. We will die sooner from lack of sleep than we will from lack of food. Okay, next source of energy. That's the quantity, physical. Next one is emotional energy. This is the quality of how we feel at any given point in time. And it turns out that when we are performing at our best, we actually feel a certain way. Think about that for a moment. When you are really performing at your best, when you are on fire, when you are just doing amazing work, shout out to me, how do you feel? Fantastic. Fantastic. Yes, what else?
Awesome.
Awesome. What else? Confident.
Empowered.
Sorry, somebody say calm? Yeah. Anybody, you happy?
Happy, passionate.
Yes, passionate, happy, all those things. Are you always exactly sure how you're going to accomplish what you're going to accomplish? Do you always know? No. As a matter of fact, that's part of the energy sometimes. The challenge is, how do I solve this problem? But you know you are on it. You know you're going to accomplish it. And that emotional energy fuels our performance, which means that we are not feeling those things. When you are not feeling those high-octane emotions, whatever emotional energy you have is not necessarily fueling your performance to its best. So the more we can cultivate positive emotions, the more that we can fuel our tank up on an ongoing basis with gratitude and joy and appreciation and optimism. Those are really important things. That's why mindfulness matters so much, because it gives you access to that. It helps you find that within yourself so you can pull from that, fill that tank up. So the moments when you need it most, when life comes at you and challenges you, you are resilient. You are more able to push back. You're more able to stand your ground and not get triggered into a downward spiral. So emotional energy is really important for our performance. It's the quality of how we feel. Now, somebody mentioned earlier mental energy. Mental energy is our ability to focus on one thing at a time in an absorbed manner. without interruption. How often do you get to do that? Yeah, not so much. Kind of unfamiliar. I have to go camping, literally. My husband is taking me camping Thursday and Friday to a place where he knows that there is absolutely no connect, right? Not. There is no way. I can't, even if I bring every piece of technology, there's no way I can connect to anything. That is his way to get me disconnected. Like even me in energy work, I have to be pulled away to disconnect. But focus, think about it. Your ability to really concentrate, to be fully absorbed in something, to allow for the creativity and the new ideas and the brainstorming and all the stuff that comes up in unbidden ways. Often, when we are mindful, that's where all the creativity comes in. So, mental energy, hugely important. And then finally, there's that of our spiritual energy. This is our sense of purpose and meaning. It's the feeling that we matter, that what we do matters, that we're contributing to the world in a way that does matter. And we need that. It's really the energy that moves us through our lives. So 4 sources of energy, each are interdependent, none can exist by themselves. And the work that we do with our clients, and many of whom are present at this conference with Facebook and Google and Box and right here at Stanford Children's Hospital and Kaiser, we really help people access these 4 sources of energy and begin to understand how to tap into these sources in a way that we have never been taught before. So, one of the big ideas I want to leave you with is that to perform at our best, we must balance the expenditure of energy with intermittent energy renewal. This is the secret sauce. And what do you suppose mindfulness is? It's renewal. And there's a passive version, just like the deep breathing or the meditation. There's an active version, like when you got up and you moved and you stretched. But they're all ways to renew your body, to bring you back into the moment, into the present moment, in order for you to bring your best self to your whole lives. So it's not unlike, like the Indy 500 or Formula One in Europe. Is the winner of that race the person who drives the fastest, crossing the finish line first without ever stopping? What do they have to do?
Pit stop.
They have to do pit stops. What do they do in pit stops?
Change the tires.
Change the tires. Fuel the car, right? Maybe they fuel the driver. How fast can they do it?
2.3 seconds.
They're pretty darn fast. They're very fast. And do you suppose that they have practiced it? Of course, they don't get out there and wing it and hope that they get the tires on right. No, they have practiced it over and over, and they've gotten faster and faster and better and better. And so can we. We can get better at our pit stops, we can build them in, we can be more efficient, so that a minute of mindfulness can actually bring us back in a deep way into whatever we're facing next. So I want to leave you with this question, or I'll leave you with a question to consider and to ponder. If you had more energy, what would you do with it? If you had more energy, not more time, more energy. Back to you, Nancy.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Okay, now at this point we're going to go around and give you some next steps, some takeaways. And we'll start with Steph.
Thanks. So I'm a huge fan of the 3 breaths practice that Nancy did. So I think my takeaway would be for you guys is to play with that. And that can take a few formats. Nancy led us through just a very simple focus on your 3 breaths. In the Search Inside Yourself program, we also sometimes use that to check in with kind of what's happening in your mind, in your heart, in your physical body. So you can direct your 3 breaths or to shift to a feeling of connection with someone else. But it's just such a great integrated practice. So it's something you can carry around with you throughout your day and use it, as that pit stop that Laurie was describing.
Thank you, Steph. Laurie.
I think you can start considering this idea of renewal, not as something you squeeze in when you can or do on the weekends or on vacation only, but really as a fundamental, powerful source of fueling your performance, and then find simple ways of building it into your day. It can be as short as a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It can be getting a breath of fresh air, talking to a loved one, doing the deep breathing, going outside, getting some food. But really start to notice when you begin to hit a wall, when your body begins to tell you you've gone too far and you're getting tired and you're getting distracted and you're getting fidgety, rather than push through that next time, step away. Do something for your pit stop for a few moments, and then come back in and really notice what is the quality of your emotions. How are you able to notice your focus? What does your body feel like? What is your sense of belonging in what you're doing? How does that all affected by that few moments of renewal? And then begin to model that and share that so that others can begin to see that renewal is actually the antidote to the stress that we feel. It's not about reducing the stress and the demands. It's about our relationship with it. And the part that's missing is that we've never learned how to consciously renew in order to fuel our performance.
Thank you, Laurie. Okay, and here's mine. And this is related, Laurie, to how you're going to go camping and be disconnected. Well, I've been doing something lately, and it's been absolutely amazing, I got to tell you. And I challenge all of you to do it and try it tomorrow, okay? Okay, between, say, 9 to 5, this is what I do. I look at my email, my text messages, all that, once every hour, once every other hour. On the odd hours, I look at it at 9 o'clock, 11, 1, 3, and 5. And when I do that, I am able to concentrate on what I'm doing a lot more. I can get a lot more chunks of work done, and also I feel more relaxed. I'm actually going home at night feeling happy that I've accomplished really great work. So I challenge all of you, try it tomorrow. Just look at your electronic media, your email and all that, only once every other hour. You will be stunned at the results. And thank you everyone for being here and being with us in our panel. We'll open it up for Q&A right now. Yes?
It's not necessarily a question, but it's a comment, and what you're talking about, breaking it up. There's a lot in the startup world where we must be able to multitask, but I've read several articles where people's overall productivity is a lot lower if they aren't focused on one thing for a period of time. And so the true multitasking, you're not getting that intense focus and productivity on each item that you're working on.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I may, the research is quite clear that the human brain is incapable of doing two cognitive tasks simultaneously. And that's what I want to stress, is cognitive tasks. You could be on the phone and stirring soup, maybe not a big deal. But if you're trying to do two cognitive tasks, your brain is not capable of it. What you're doing is you're switching, it's called switching time. It comes out of the computer world. It's the time it takes for your brain to switch from one thought to another, one task to another, just like for a computer to switch from one program to another. And in multitasking, what's clear is that over time we lose, first of all, it takes 25% longer to do both of those tasks that you're multitasking on than if you had done them one at a time sequentially. So the very reason we multitask is what? Save time. Well, guess what? It takes longer. And the rate of errors increases, we miss information, it totally disconnects us from other human beings, we do not have access to our creativity or thinking outside the box. It has a very strong detrimental effect over time. So what we teach in our work is we're not suggesting don't multitask, it's part of our world. But we are suggesting be very conscious about when you choose not to. Really think about it. Like, do I really want to multitask now? Is this the thing to do? And I'm getting to the point more and more where I believe anytime we want to interact with another human being, don't multitask. What does it tell somebody else when you can't be present for them because your phone or your technology is more important than talking to them and interacting with them at work or in our lives? It's a real challenge in our world today, kind of getting some limits around that.
Yes, please.
Is there an ideal cadence for kind of taking a step back and having that renewal time during the day? Any study around that? Or recommendations? Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out we live in parallel rhythms during the day, similar to what we sleep at night. So just like we go through cycles of sleep, for our basic rest activity cycle. So too during the day we have cycles, and they're called ultradian rhythms, and they run about every 90 minutes. So the maximum we can go, if we're starting out fairly rested to begin with, key phrase, is about 90 minutes. And your body will let you know when you're losing that capacity. Now, I say the other piece of it is, it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing something that's really intense, really mentally taxing, you might have to renew more often. Listen to your body, pay attention, it will give you the signs. Watch your attention, it'll help you.
Any more questions, comments? Yes.
And one more. So with the organizations that you both have worked with, and I say this from even personal practice, how do you ensure longevity and that the mindfulness after you introduce it continues and is part of the culture?
That's a great question, particularly because we do generally come in for a short training, and so I think that's why I wanted to really give you that example from Chalk Children's, that there's that kind of a whole ecosystem that can evolve. And one of the things I find so exciting about bringing any mindfulness program into an organization is people will come out of the woodworks that say, oh, I have my own meditation practice, but I didn't think I could talk about it at work. And those are your people that will help sustain a program. And so what we often see is some combination of more formal training, like the Search Inside Yourself program or like the Energy Project program, coupled with more of that grassroots ongoing work. So regular meditation practices, mindful lunches, groups that are gathering on different topics. So it's nice to have that combination.
And I just want to mention that Kaiser is one of our clients who we adore, and we are in the process of rolling this work out through the entire IT organization. So for anybody who thinks, oh yeah, it's stuff, that's over there for the other departments, not for the tech departments. This is, I think people, especially in your work, are hungry for this because you really are the ones who are challenged with the technology and what it does and the impact on us more than anybody. So it's wonderful that you've shown up to this conversation, and if there's something you can take back to your organizations, we certainly encourage you to do that, because others are probably feeling the same way and don't have the conversation to be able to talk about and get help with each other.
And I have a comment about the longevity, because people need to realize that this is a habit, and habits take work, but it pays off. And once you start doing it and you get used to it, if you should stop, you'll notice that you'll miss it. And you'll either go back to it or not. But if you do go back to it, you'll feel the same positive effects again. So it's a habit, and I think people need to realize that to keep it up. Okay, once again, I want to thank everybody for being here and listening to our presentation. If you have any questions or comments, please find us out in the foyer out there. Thank you very much.